They said to check the mic. That works. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that we are the last people before you in the cocktail hour, so we will be brief and hopefully informative. My name is Perry Quinn. I'm the SVP of Innovation over at the National Restaurant Association. I won't go into great detail because everybody here is going to introduce themselves. But we're going to be talking about how the actual restaurant industry is being disrupted by technology, just like every other industry. The neat thing about this panel is we have an operator, Cristina, we have a huge data person with Eli, and then we have a customer-facing technology here with Ilir, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Cristina. I'm a founder and partner of Inday, which is a fast casual, healthy restaurant based in New York. I started my career in a very different place, in consulting, but in the back of my mind, I knew that my real passion was food, but I didn't want to be a chef, and I didn't really know how to make my way there. And I started seeing all these really exciting things happening with tech innovations and venture funding and food companies using technology to create really scalable and amazing brands. So I met Bashu, who's one of our co-founders, and was really inspired by his passion, his mission, which is to spread good karma through food and to build connections, but build a company in a way that uses technology to create these communities and these spaces. And that's how we want to grow. That's our passion, and that's our mission, which inspires me.
Hi, I'm Eli Portnoy. I'm the founder of Sense 360. And what we do is we help restaurants like Chipotle and Wendy's use data and business intelligence to drive better decisions so that they don't have to rely on surveys and on gut. So that's what we do.
I gotta outdo Cristina now. That's tough. Ilir, Sela, founder and CEO of Slice. We're the only full-service technology and marketing platform specifically dedicated to the pizza category. What that means, basically, we're building the largest pizza chain in the world, powered by local pizza. And how I got into this, I am third generation person in the pizza industry. My grandfather, father, uncle, all owned and operated pizza restaurants. Today, many family and friends own pizzerias. I myself have a technology background, computer science degree and whatnot. So 30 plus family and friends see me as the technology website guy. I realize they're all the same in their needs and their sort of asks, and as they were approaching me to help them in sort of this digital world. And that's when I launched the company in 2010, bootstrapped it for 5 years. Fast forward to 2015, had over 3,000 pizza restaurants on the platform. Today, we're approaching 7,000, and just excited to kind of solve this technology puzzle for the most SMB sort of category of the SMB world, and that's local pizzerias.
That's great. And I'm going to ask the main level topic question, and then I'll ask each individual question because, again, they're so different in their backgrounds and what they're doing. So stating the obvious, obviously, technology is driving an incredible amount of change in the industry right now. Are the operators and technology providers or the consumers driving most of that change? And I'm going to look to Ilir on this first one. So, Ilir, you cover, if you look at Domino's and Pizza Hut, everybody else beyond the large players, it's about 60% of the market. So are you actually, are you trying to level the playing field, or are you just responding to consumer needs?
Yeah, so the pizza category itself, over 60% of the pizza category is made up of local pizzerias. That's independents and small chains. Big Pizza, that's Domino's, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, really make up about 30%, 32% of the industry. And really what we're trying to do not only is it to level the playing field, we're trying to really own the category and help local restaurants, local pizzerias win, because I believe they fundamentally have a better product. But over the last handful of years, what's been happening is Big Pizza is kind of crushing it, and rightly so. They're doing an amazing job on the technology front. And I think to answer the question, it's got to be almost a united front. I don't think to have the perfect formula for success, you have to develop and sort of introduce a product that solves both sides of the equation. I think when you're leaning on one side versus the other, especially in the category that we play in, you kind of end up not really having this sort of win-win scenario. And I'm a big believer in relationships and win-win scenarios. So it kind of has to be a full sort of closed loop where you're driving efficiency for the local pizzerias and sort of driving them and leading them in the technology world. But at the same time, it has to be, and the one question, for example, at Slice that we have to answer every single time is, does it improve the consumer experience? And is it what the customer wants? And if it answers yes on both sides, then you'll see us doing that. If not, then I think just in general, I think that's not really a great formula for success in the category.
Great. Next question, Cristina. So you're a restaurant operator, and I know that a lot of the technology is driven by customer demand. How much of that is more keeping up with competition versus serving the needs of your customers?
I'd say it's definitely a combination of both. And if we think about delivery technology, for example, for context, we use third-party services, so something like Caviar or Uber Eats. And then we recently launched our own app about 3 weeks ago, and then partner with someone for delivery. In that case, we take a lot of cues from other industries, so seeing how they engage with their consumers and make it much more convenient. I'd say it's primarily consumer demand, and two trends we see. One, the world just is getting flatter, and I think we're used to getting not just food, but everything literally at our fingertips, and I think that's just the new normal, and we have to adapt. We also see another trend, which is more around the kind of health and wellness space. So with the influx of like athleisure and all these fitness boutiques, and we think that food is such a huge component of it, and more people want to have delicious, healthful food for lunch, but not everyone can leave their desk for lunch, or not everyone is walking distance from Inday. So technology like delivery and like these apps are ways to reach more customers. There's great benefits. It's a source of ancillary revenue. It's about 20% of our business. There are some challenges. It is, some of them, margin dilutive, so we give up a chunk of the sales. We don't fully control the customer experience when it's working with a third party. So we spend so much time in our store thinking about hospitality and thinking about the customer experience. And it does give us a little bit of anxiety when you no longer have that full control. But overall, it's tremendously valuable, and by far the benefits outweigh the costs.
Great. So Eli, I think one of our first conversations, you used the term customer benefit, and you gave the example of beacons. Beacons were put out more from the operator side versus from the customer side. Do you see a lot of technology created just for technology's sake, or do you actually see that customer interest in mind?
I think there are examples of both. I think when I sort of see the evolution of how retailers and restaurants kind of deploy their first apps, I see a little bit of that where they needed to put an app out there and they didn't really think about the consumer benefit, and it was really more about, hey, I need an app strategy, so I'm going to put one out there. And what you ended up with were a whole bunch of very hollow apps with zero consumer benefit, and so they didn't get downloaded, they didn't get used. And some restaurants took that and kind of learned the conclusion that, hey, apps aren't valuable, they're not necessary, I shouldn't make the investment, whereas others really saw them for what they were, which was a technology initiative devoid of consumer benefit, and they went back to the drawing board and they said, how can we benefit our consumers via these apps? And they came back and they said, well, we could do delivery, we could do in-store pickup, we can do all sorts of stuff, and all of a sudden they started to see really great traction. And I think Starbucks is a great example of that, and now you're starting to see that across the board. And so I think that, yeah, there are lots of cases like beacons or the early versions of some of the apps that were put out there just because someone somewhere said we need an app strategy or we need a beacon strategy. But at the end of the day, there are kernels of value to the consumer, and if you find them, you can build something really interesting that benefits both the business and the consumer.
Great. Next topic, so big data. It's a term that's used way too much. And I said I wasn't going to use it, but I did. But of course, data can be overwhelming. Lots of different levels of sophistication out there. And each of you guys you're working on helping others or helping businesses essentially make better business decisions with the data. And then for operators, you're actually trying to use that data to make business decisions. So again, this first question is for you, Eli. So data and analytics, completely your business. Do you see a pattern of your customers making mistakes? Because you probably deal with so many different folks that you see that standard, oh, here they go, they're going into this one space that I know exactly what the questions are going to be, and they're either not understanding the data or they're trying to figure it out, and maybe elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, so I won't talk about one of our customers, but I will talk about a very well-known restaurant, McDonald's. And typically the way restaurants make decisions about who they ultimately serve and what kind of menus they should put out there and what kind of marketing messages is they go and they conduct these big survey studies. And in these survey studies, they have people waiting outside of the restaurant asking people questions like, how many times in the last year have you been to our business? And what other places do you go to? And they use that data to then try and come up with personas, basically just get an understanding of who's coming to them and where else they're going. And so a few years ago, McDonald's took on this study, and they basically reported a couple of months ago in the Wall Street Journal that they completely misunderstood their customer, and they thought that their customer was leaving them to go to sort of healthier, fast casual, better food. And so they really revamped the menu and they revamped their marketing activities, and they went after this perceived customer change, only to find out later that they completely messed it up, and actually their core customer is the fast food, the QSR, the I want my hamburger, and they were going to Wendy's and Burger King, not to Chipotle. And so they realized that mistake, and it actually, they estimated cost them 500 million transactions over the course of a few years. So a very, very costly mistake. And I think that happens when you either don't collect the right data or you don't understand the data. And so the way I like to think about it is the data now is out there. We're living in the first time in human history where you don't need to use surveys to try and collect this data. This data is now being exhausted as we all move about the world, but it's important to understand that data and understand how to apply it and how to understand it. Otherwise, the mistakes can be really costly.
So Cristina, the question that every tech salesperson would love to ask an operator basically is, what data do you use? How do you use it? What are some of the insights you get from that? Or, I'm giving you a lot of questions here. And basically, what do you do with that? And how do you use that data on a daily business, because you're fighting fires and you're trying to essentially make the right decisions with probably too much data or not enough? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say, so Bashu and I both coming from a background where it was all about like data-driven decision makings, and it was just like drilled into your head. So I think we do focus on data a bit more than your average restaurant. And from an operating piece, we get really rich data from our POS, our point of sale system, which we download every day. So we look at our sales from the previous day, throughput, so what were our sales per hour, what was our product mix, and every day we kind of investigate what can we learn. We use it for budgeting. If we're seeing any changes in the P mix, it sets off a lot of questions, maybe not always answers. So, what is it about this? Did the recipe change? Should we take this menu off because it's summer and no one wants to eat, steak anymore? So it also just prompts us to ask a lot of questions, and it's very helpful operationally. One piece of data, which it's like the bane of my existence that we don't have this, is consumer purchasing data. So our point of sale system can collect data based on credit cards and can in some ways give you individual IDs. And marketing 101, like you're able to get customers, segment them by purchasing trends, target them, use it for loyalty CRM. We can't get that data. Like, we don't have the ability to access that data. And it's so basic that it drives me a little bit crazy. Our POS system is working on it. And there's some solutions that just for a restaurant our size don't really exist. So there are some great solutions, something like Level Up, but it's expensive. And we're currently a one-unit store. So a lot of this technology isn't really there for us yet. So that's the big one. It's our biggest priority. It's what we're working on, but it's a huge just hole for us.
Sounds like a business opportunity.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and Ilir, question for you. So you work with an incredibly broad group of folks. So, from the semi-sophisticated or sophisticated probably to the less sophisticated. How much education around data and presentation of that data back do you have to really educate that person to explain that it's A, valuable, B, or we not giving enough credit there?
Yeah, no, it's a great question because I think, and again, we deal with, I would say, on the data sort of side, a very unsophisticated audience, and that is the local independent pizzeria owner, which, as I said earlier, is sort of the SMB of SMBs, and so imagine that. And so for us, education is really at the core of what we do initially, and I think the most important thing is to first and foremost, earn the trust of the small business owners. Once you have the trust and you have an opportunity to educate and use data to drive decisions. As an example, for us in an aggregated way, understanding that and understanding the appetite of the consumer for, let's say, delivery fees. And educating the owner on the importance of having free delivery even if you raise the prices of your menu. Who knew that actually drives consumer behavior and conversion and the whole thing. So that's kind of at the basic level. At some of the more sort of advanced things that we're thinking about, looking at sort of dynamic pricing based on time of day. So obviously between lunch and dinner, small business restaurants have a wide gap in terms of demand. How do you then adjust pricing to drive up demand during sort of that gap between, I would say, 2 p.m. and 5 or 6 p.m.? So again, using all of these insights and consumer behaviors, and we have the luxury of that because we have a two-sided marketplace. So we have millions of customers that are on the platform, and then we have thousands of restaurants on the other side. And we're doing a great job, and our team in general is just doing an amazing job at understanding both sides and solving that problem. But I feel your pain. It's not an easy thing. It just goes. Part of our responsibility as small business or just a startup in the technology field, in the restaurant field, is to be responsible and have that sort of vision to make sure that we do right by these small business owners. Because what happens today is these restaurants get called by so many folks selling things that Eli spoke to that were just irresponsible in the way that it didn't really solve anything for the business. That makes it very difficult for even the most pure and accurate data to drive business decisions because you're breaking down trust right off the bat. So, those are the challenges we have, but education is definitely at the top of what we do. It starts with that, and then we move forward. So.
Got it. Well, I think I'm looking at the time here. We have just one quick last question here. So, and it's just a slight variation on what's already been asked, but each of you, of course, depending if you're an operator or you're a provider, you have to balance, again, new technology with the way that these businesses have run, not excluding a lot of the new school, if you will, the native operators out there. How do you balance that? And I'll start with Ilir here. So you'd mentioned that you took the business first approach and loyalty first, but you move people up this technology ladder from faxing on. Yeah. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I'm actually, so I've taken a theory. Who here knows who Raymond Loewy is? Raymond Loewy. So he's actually the father of modern industrial design, and he came up with a theory called Maya, and that is most advanced yet acceptable. So I think one of the challenges we have as technologists and incredibly smart people is we're really advanced, almost too advanced, and we're not yet acceptable to small businesses. And so the way I think about it is how do we become more acceptable initially as you continue to build trust and earn and drive value to the small businesses. And then over time, through that trust and through that loyalty, you kind of lead the owners and the restaurants up that technology ladder. So as an example, we start off by faxing orders. Do I want to fax orders? Definitely not. Is it efficient? Definitely not. But it's what we have to do. It's what's acceptable today. And in fact, for many pizzeria owners, that's the definition of technology. So we have to start there and then slowly move them up the lateral. That's kind of the best way that I think you would have to solve this sort of challenge.
Got it. And Eli, so same question, but a little bit different, because again, you work with larger providers for the most part, not pigeonholing you, but those large providers probably have native and legacy type folks in there. How do you work on making sure that you're addressing both sides of that equation?
I actually think it's fairly similar. So even though our customer base tends to be a little bit larger and more sophisticated, at the end of the day, they're people. And what we have found is that anytime you introduce something new and different, it's very jarring and it's very difficult. And so initially when we started selling our data, we really focused on the concept of big data. We can do all these things you couldn't do before. There are all these incredible innovations in what we're doing. And what we found out was that that's a really bad way to sell. Instead, what we've done is we've kind of tried to hide all of the stuff that we're doing on the back end and create an output that's very similar to what they have now, except it's a lot faster, except it's a lot more accurate, except it's a lot more detailed. So it's less about sort of the how we do it, and it's more about just showing them and giving them something that they're used to working with, but in a way that takes full advantage of the progress and innovation that we've been able to make. So that's how we try to do it.
Got it. And Cristina, the question for you. So you obviously have to keep the doors open, the food great, service great. How do you balance implementing new technology and just deciding on it with keeping the day-to-day business operating?
Yeah, and I think what one thing mentioned earlier, which really rung true, is we get probably 24 calls a day of like all these different types of technologies and service providers. And we could have spent literally all day on like sales calls and implementing pilots. So we have to be really strategic about it. And there's some parts of the business where we truly think the old school way is better. So for example, with delivery, we think our delivery partners have developed all this technology and these algorithms that allow them to be more efficient, to do a better job in getting the deliveries to customers much quicker than we ever would. Great, we'll outsource that. Catering is much bigger customers, kind of higher profile for us. We want to maintain that control. And so even if there was a technology, we wouldn't do it. We want to do it ourselves. There's some where we don't think they're mutually exclusive. So with customer engagement and insights and feedback, we definitely want to improve the technology side of that. But we also want to spend time on the floor and just engaging face-to-face with our customer. And that's something that regardless of whatever technology we'd ever implement, we don't want to lose that. And then there's the third piece, which I think is where we try and spend most energy, is in those gaps where they're really important, but we just haven't found the right technology partners for a company our size. So with loyalty, we still have like punch cards. I didn't even know those still existed, but they do. Or same with, we have an online survey. It's not the best, but we make do with what we have.
Got it, great. Well, we have about a minute left, and thank you. Perfect segue into the Q&A. Thank you. I cued him, thank you.
Hi, Cristina, for you. You say you're very hungry for data on your customers, right? I'm just looking at your website. Do you take reservations?
We don't. So we are a fast casual restaurant. So it's like a serve line,
Right.
primarily lunch, quick service. But yeah, that's one of the challenges versus other restaurants that would have reservation systems, and you're able to collect emails and much more data than what we would do.
What about like a captive portal for free Wi-Fi? Do you offer that? That's actually a fabulous way to capture customer data if they're logging in through their social media.
It is, yeah. That's a fantastic idea. We have, we use Turnstile, so we use a service. I'm sure there's others. It's certain customers who are opting to log into the Wi-Fi. So it gets us a good amount of customers, but it's not the richness that we'd have if like every transaction was recorded and gathering data from that. But really great recommendations, thank you.
says time on the sign. We have one more question. Can we take the question? Did you have a question? Somebody back there? No? Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, panelists. And if you guys have questions, we'll be out having drinks here shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.